Well, hey everybody, my name is Jared Malott. I'm here with my good friend Mateo Calise, and here we are, episode
Everyone.
31 of the Coltist. Thanks for sticking around. If you would, if you enjoy the content that we put out, we're gonna record this on Sunday night and put it out on Monday morning every week during
Yeah,
the NFL regular season. This week, we're going to talk about these last two preseason games. We'll look ahead to the final preseason game. So, hey, while we were chopping it up before, we kind of realized, hey, they shortened the preseason 3 weeks. I don't know if you knew that
yeah,
yet.
it was last
Uh,
season. Yeah.
um, so
So before we get started, I wanted to ask you what is like the first play that comes to mind when you think Donald Brown?
when I
Because
think of Donald Brown,
I have two memorable plays from him.
no, go tell me.
The first one is I believe he was the guy that caught the first touchdown pass from Andrew Luck,
Hmm,
first game against the Bears. I believe it was a screenplay that went like over 50 yards.
okay.
And the second one is you remember that memorable Andrew Luck play against the Chiefs in the comeback game where the running back fumbles and
And he
Andrew Luck
picks it
picks
up.
it up and dives it in for a score. Yeah,
Eh.
Donald Brown was the guy that fumbled there.
Oh, he was the guy that actually fumbled the ball. So
So
he's the goat of the
yeah,
goat on those two particular plays, huh?
yeah, he was. Let me like I don't know if my memory is, but I don't remember if it was against the Rams in the preseason or against the Bears in the Andrew Luck debut game. But I
Mhm.
remember that Donald Brown was the first player to catch a pass from
Andrew Luck.
from Andrew Luck.
Yeah. So I was kind of looking at Colts players that had wore 31 in the past, and Nelson Muncie came up as a 5-year Colt that wore 31. And Don Brown wore 31 for the Colts for 4 seasons. Um, but yeah, we want to make sure we're talking about Colts players fans would recognize, right? We had to talk about Nelson Muncie, who. Um, but if you like the content that we're putting out here, make sure you follow. Um, Subscribe to my YouTube
Yeah,
channel. We're gonna put out, like I said, we put this podcast out about every week. And then for Stampede Blue this year, I'm also gonna put out a weekly sort of daily fantasy football. We'll kind of separate that from the Coltists. So we talk about the
yeah.
Colts, and I'm gonna put out separate content to cover sports betting and daily fantasy and fantasy football. I've got some
Our
stuff for you this
our
year.
fantasy we have 10 guys for our fantasy football league this season, right? For the Stampede Blue Stuff
I
fantasy
think
league.
I think we have 11.
Oh,
Like we
that's
had we
that's
had 11 and we were gaining a guy and then we lost a staff no, we lost
yeah,
we lost a staff member. Um so yeah, we're right at 11. I imagine we'll either add one or someone will back out last second. That's why I haven't said anything about it. It's just like let it be. It'll be what
yeah.
it is.
Those things turn to sort out like in itself.
Yep. So fantasy football in mind, I do want to make sure we say on our podcast that, hey, if you are a Stampede Blue fan, if you are a Colts fan, hell, if you just like our podcast, um, there is a post on Stampede Blue, which should be floating around the top, that is a fantasy football call out for a free league. And I have sort of joked about if enough people do sign up for one of these free fantasy football leagues, we'll just do like a regular PPR league, try to keep it to 10 to 12 people per league. I've said I'd do a draft one a day, like a week prior to the first regular season football games. And only a handful of people have signed up, and everybody does it, signs up real late in the year, and I end up running 6, 7 leagues. So I'm just making sure I say something that, hey, if you want to play fantasy football, check out
Yeah,
Stampede Blue and try to filter through there for a fantasy football call out post. It's got my email address, which is jared.stampedeblue@gmail.com. If you want to just send me an email and say, hey, there's about a week prior to the first regular season games that I'm planning on doing a draft each day. So just tell me which day works best. Send me an email. And we'll kind of do it that way. But let's get chopping here. Colts have played 2 preseason games to this point. Um, I try not to read too much into it, right? We were kind of talking
yeah. It's
about
just yeah,
prior, uh, just putting out guys that are generally considered starters in a preseason game is kind of a dumb move, right?
yeah, yeah.
Just
We agree on that one. Yeah,
it's just not at all what I want to watch is your starter get hit. I do want to point this out, and I don't want to come off as a Carson Wentz hater, but I did notice one of the lowlights from that Washington
yeah.
game
I
was
think
him
we all
getting
saw that
sacked.
play. Yeah,
And it's just like, it's the preseason. You're just supposed to throw it and get out of the way,
Yeah, they're
man. And
yeah,
that's why, obviously, Pat McAfee said it best this past week. It's not necessarily so much that Carson Wentz was terrible at his job as the market was there for Carson Wentz. Um, and that needs to be kind of kept in mind that there's been a lot of things that have not been said. Like if you've sort of listened, no players have come out and said that there was anything going on. So it really could have just been that in addition to having a lackluster end of that season, that there was also just a really good market for him and the Colts got sort of rewarded for being patient. And then here, obviously, having picked up Matt Ryan, so far it sounds like the organization's in love with their decision, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Every
far, so
super
good. Yeah,
serious, super competitive, came in, runs a tight ship. And if you watched,
managed to remain healthy throughout training camp and the
hey,
preseason, which Carson
hey,
Wentz did not manage to do. You remember, like he missed the entire training camp, preseason.
yeah,
When you're a new quarterback on a new team, that takes a hit on you. You like the first few games, he just did not seem like in the same page with the receivers and the
hmm
offense, and it was kind of rough to look at. But yeah, I don't want to be like the guy that like moves on, like
hmm
breaks up with a girlfriend, and just all the
right.
time looking at what she's doing. So yeah, I mean, of
It,
course, like because of what happened and how he talked about the Colts and how everything went, me being a Colts fan, like I don't want a guy to succeed because it would make us look like really stupid.
right.
So yeah, it will be something more to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I mean, always want to make sure we say like I'm pro player. I'm more likely to have a ill opinion of an organization than I am the players themselves. Carson Wentz, I just found myself disappointed with his decision making on the field regularly. And when you pay a lot of money for a guy that and you bring him in and you expect him
Yeah,
to potentially be the guy for a while, and he does
yeah,
whatever happened, does so much that they were willing to just part ways with after 1 year.
yeah. And
To
considering,
me that move is just as significant as Andrew Luck retiring. And I get it.
yeah,
People are like, no,
considering
no, no, no.
what he
Andrew Luck's a
paid for.
generational talent. You know what I mean? We couldn't protect him and he retired to keep himself, to potentially like lengthen his life, right? Carson Wentz, we let go. He made bad decisions. The market was there to get rid of him and not lose because
Yeah,
if
too
he
much. It
doesn't
was
work
not a
out
bad.
and you don't get anything for him, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
it's
they got something for him. They got, you know, I still feel super good about what you give
yeah,
up and
that
what you
return.
get
Yeah,
for Matt Ryan. And you're like, wow, yeah, that's way better. I'd
yeah.
rather have that
Looking at
anyway.
that, you make an upgrade at the position, and you get like extra draft capital with it. So it's a good move. Like it's definitely a very good move.
Now, we say all that to say the Colts apparently plan on playing their starters for the first half
Yeah,
of this last preseason game. And again, we not I'm not a big fan of that. I know you're not either. It's not a contest that means anything. Uh, I think anytime you shorten like a preseason, for example, that makes it mean less to me, right? And you
yeah,
added regular season games, which makes them mean
yeah.
more.
Because now there are 17. Yeah. The only reason I can think of them like playing the starters is because of how young like most of the team is. Like
Yeah,
you look at most of the starters, and for most of them, they are either below 25 years or it's their first season with the team. Like we have no established veterans on this team.
yeah. That's a really good point, Mateo. And it's a lot of the reason I kind of brought up gambling early. A lot of people start, started to message me, what do you think the Colts are going to do this year? Right? Because there's some people that would love to gamble on the game and want to hear what we think about that. And we've decided we will do a season preview for next week's episode. But for this week, we want to kind of make sure we stay in the preseason because that's where we are.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where we are right now.
uh, First of all, I have been saying this for as long as Frank Reich and Chris Ballard have been in charge that I feel like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. For example, a lot of people have talked about Jonathan Taylor is not going to get the same sort of workload that he got last year.
Yeah,
I disagree. Um, I think that also people have talked about how the Colts don't have enough weapons. And again, I disagree. I think Pittman and Pierce are going to be plenty. I think it'd be nice if you had like a third or fourth wide receiver that you could like rely upon. But the reality is you have Hines. And then I think you
yeah,
can involve Taylor a little more in your passing game. And ultimately you can spread them out a little more and you've got better athletes. You got at least two of the best athletes on the field in Taylor and Hines. Um,
yeah.
and then you just have to have a good decision maker back there that's just a dealer and gets the ball out of his hand quick. And that's just how their offense runs. Um, but yeah, I'm a little wary this upcoming week. So that's something we want to talk about is obviously thus far, uh, the Colts have maintained relative health. Obviously, tight end is it Kyle Ogletree? Am I wrong
Andrew
about that?
Ogletree. Andrew
Huh?
Ogletree.
Drew
Andrew
Ogletree?
Ogletree.
Andrew
Yeah, Drew
Ogletree.
Ogletree.
Tore his ACL in a non-contact injury in training camp. And I think that there might be I want to say a defensive tackle that has gotten injured too. But the point I'm trying to
I
make
don't
is the
remember.
Colts
Yeah.
have been fortunate thus far that no entrenched starter or someone that's expected to start has been injured yet. And that's why I'm sort of leery of, oh God, they're going to try to play the starters the first half
Yeah,
of this third
why
preseason
risk it?
game.
You know,
Why
why
risk
toy
it?
with a lot? Yeah.
You have an opportunity here to at least start the first regular season game completely healthy. And I get it.
Yeah.
We know why they're playing their starters is because the Colts, since Frank Reich has arrived, they've started this regular season slow. And they want to get these starters reps to sort of ramp them into the regular season. Again, I just disagree. Like work really hard the week leading up or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
you
don't
know,
don't put
just do
don't
it.
put your
Yeah,
players
don't risk
in
it.
jeopardy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Because
but
you remember last season, you know, week one, week two against the Seahawks, and week two, I believe, was against the Rams.
mhm,
Braden Smith got injured. Quentin Nelson was like a bit injured. Carson Wentz was injured, and we had like most of the starters dealing with injuries.
mhm,
And as a result, you know, we started the season like dropping. What was it like 1-5, 1-4?
mhm.
I
Yeah, I mean, it was
remember.
a rough
So yeah,
start, rough
got it.
start to the year.
You have your entire offense healthy, defense safe from Darius Shaquille Leonard. Sorry, my
Yeah,
apologies.
Shaquille
He goes
Leonard.
by
Mhm.
Shaquille now. You
Yeah,
have them healthy, so why risk an injury in a meaningless game?
yeah.
Just be
To sell tickets. I mean,
yeah,
the reality is that there's not a lot of film of their um, joint practices with the Lions. There's fortunately for us, Pat McAfee's podcast was sideline and basically talked about how good the Colts looked against the Lions. And I get it. One, it's the Lions. Two, it's just a joint practice. But uh, what I think that we all kind of discount is like your success against a random opponent. And so Frank Reich talked about how he prefers joint practices to preseason games because it's more of a controlled environment and you have a better opportunity to reduce injury by letting the guys know like,
yeah,
yeah, we're trying to like compete here, but we're not trying to end each other's careers. Uh, you know what I mean? And you can't really do that in a preseason football game. It's once the whistle blows, whatever happens, happens, kids. That's why we lace them up. Um, so yeah, I totally understand our opinion. It's not like I'm disagreeing with myself. I'm saying like I totally understand anybody that's like, wow, it's really asinine to play your starters in a meaningless preseason game when we've kind of been through the ringer in terms of injuries and we were still trying to get back healthy like you mentioned with Shaquille Leonard, still coming back off a back and ankle. So that said, though, I understand not wanting to start our season how we have, but like, again, that's why you require a guy like Matt Ryan that you expect to be a little more disciplined. Um, and is going to help you be a little more consistent early in the season. And again, my hope is that Frank Reich's decision making is as dialed in as their offense apparently has looked. specifically in those joint practices. Like I said, Pat McAfee said the Colts looked unstoppable on offense, and uh, I also have heard that the Colts haven't like fully unleashed Jonathan Taylor within that offense yet.
Yeah.
So certainly a lot to be excited for, a lot to be wary and leery about, right? Like, I just hate to see somebody get injured, and then that be the reason that we're lackluster, right? It just, yeah, we were banged up from a stupid incident, a preseason game, and I'll point to an incident that happened early in the season, which again, I don't want to not take any regular season game not seriously, but I do think that there are games that are more important.
Yeah.
And division games, games that are conference games, but your non-divisional opponent games, the goal would be to like give them hell, but don't give anything away. And
Yeah.
that was when Carson Wentz got rolled up by Aaron Donald. And it's
Yes.
that I'm pointing to and saying like, see, it's idiot shit like this is keeping you from winning, right? Similarly to not having a playbook, a game plan, and starting people that don't show up to practice. But the reality of this situation now is, the Colts obviously uh, have one of the weaker schedules in the league, bottom 10. Um,
Yeah.
I think that hasn't been talked about how winnable a lot of these contests are, because of the way the schedule laid out for them.
Yeah. I
And
try
the,
not to like I try not to look at the games and say, okay, this is a winnable game because you never know because injuries happen and
oh
some
yeah.
teams like perform way better than expected.
Hmm.
But looking at the layout, you want you have, I believe, your divisional game against the Titans after a bye week, which is always like you always want to have a tough game after a bye week. That's a big plus. You don't want to have like a tough game and before a short week. Like there are some things that you always look and say, okay, we did not get screwed here. Primetime games at home. So overall, when the schedule dropped, I was like, okay, this is perhaps like the best schedule we could have hoped for.
Yeah. And that's going to be come in handy with a lot of new guys, right? Both young guys and guys that are just new to the franchise, and are kind of seeing how we do things in the preseason. But the regular season football is just a lot different, and a lot faster. Um, so I guess the remaining question is, Ogletree goes down. There have been multiple articles written. I've seen all kinds of stuff on social media that the Colts need to fill out their receiver room. A lot of people still hanging on to hope that the Colts sign Ty. And again, I'm not even saying that like Colts need to add, but it is, we gotta talk about it. I mean, is there an impetus on Chris Ballard and Frank Reich to bring Ty around here, or and again, is this something that they could just hold off on, try to develop their current roster receivers and try to make it work? Or when you lose a pass catcher, do you just have to add? Is it
I
that time?
I always thought that sooner or later T.Y. Hilton was gonna be signed by us.
Yeah.
Like at first I thought, okay, perhaps it's gonna be after training camp. T.Y. doesn't need training camp. He was here for like more than 10 seasons. But now the regular season is coming up and he's still not signed, and I'm like, what is the deal here? Like
Right.
just a weird situation all around that I could never like fully understand. I was sure that he was gonna be signed by us, but no news on that yet.
Yeah. And part of it, you don't want to spend when you don't know that you need. And I don't know that the starters have enough laps in the pool to say whether we need to acquire. You need to sign. You need to get him in practice reps, right? You're still trying to figure out if it's what is it, Desmond Patton? If it's
Yeah, Desmond Patton, Mike Strawn.
Strawn.
You have
Trying to
Ashton
think.
Dulin, who is supposed to be having
Ashton Doolin,
a really good camp, and he has really developed as a receiver, and he's been looking really good.
and
Then
he
you
plays
have,
special
well,
teams too, right?
yeah,
Yeah. See,
he's among the
I
best
think
special teams
Ashton
players, so he's a
Doolin
lot
is
to
like
make the roster.
yeah, he's pretty much a roster lock, and he's more like a fourth receiver, right? Um,
Yeah, so hopefully, like, I mean, probably they are thinking like, okay, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell, if he can like finally remain healthy.
yeah,
Then you got Ashton Dulin, you got Desmond Padman, and if you round that up with Mike Strachan, who like Desmond Padman and Mike Strachan, they bowled out against the
yeah,
Lions.
hmm
They both got touchdowns.
yeah.
So those could probably be like your six guys heading into the season, assuming, of course, that they are planning on going with six receivers.
Right. The only reason I would think that they would go to six receivers is with the loss of a tight end and in what I consider an under talented. I think the tight end room's less talented than your receiver room and probably needs more help than your receiver room does at this point, especially after you lose a guy and you don't really. I mean, I get it. Everybody wants to say Mo Alley Cox is the Jack Doyle replacement. He's going to slot in right there in that spot and he's going to be
Yeah,
just
I'm
fine.
just
And
like,
it's like,
yeah,
did he do it
you
up to
never
this
know.
point? No, he didn't really. So it's like, yeah, that'd be great if it happened. I would love for my big thing for the Colts potential is out of this world. Hence my background. If guys like Paris Campbell and Mo Alley Cox can be consistent and produce consistently and being relied upon when the rock comes your way, because I have faith in Pittman, and Pittman and Hines and Taylor, and from what I've seen of Alec Pierce, he's going to be super productive in the NFL. So
Yeah.
I think that there are teams that can match up with most of those four, and then you're gonna need guys to step up. Um, and like we've talked about, like I think that because Ashton Doolin plays special teams, he's locked to make the roster, and he's gonna get time because he's had a good camp and he's been
Yeah.
productive. And then maybe they do keep those other two receivers, but again, I'm gonna hit on my points that like it has to be Mo Alley Cox and Paris Campbell have to like stick in order for us to get over the hump. And when I say over the hump, it's like to the next step. Like win a playoff game. Hell, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it at the
Yeah.
least, I think that's where the Colts are this year. Is like it's not a Super Bowl or bust year. It's like a can we win like a playoff game? Um,
Yeah. Like being, of course, when you have a team that can make the playoff, you're always thinking Super Bowl, otherwise, like, don't even play it. But yeah, I would be happy with, say, a playoff win. Like,
yeah.
that would make me go like, okay, this is not a bad season.
Nope.
Last
Nope.
season was a bad season. That, like, missing the playoff the way we did, that was
Yeah.
a bad season.
Yeah.
But
The
it's
thing about
not
it was
Super Bowl bust.
bad to begin and bad to end, right?
Mm,
And that makes it bad all the way around. Started off sloppy and finished just in a funk.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I still do not get over that loss against the Jaguars. Like, it just sucks so bad. Uh,
a lot of the Colts players feel the same way.
yeah,
Like DeForest
yeah,
Buckner um being really bummed out and being one of the leaders of your team. Um and that not being an okay thing for him, you know. Oh, and I guess I also want to make sure that we say like, in addition to having guys like Mo Alley Cox and Paris Campbell stick, a guy like Yannick Ngakoue has to come in and be just as productive as he can't fall
yeah,
off, right? We need his productivity. Obviously, you'd love to have. Is it Odeyingbo? Is that how you pronounce
yeah.
his name?
They all.
And it's
I
Odeyingbo, O D
propose I
E Y
propose
I
that we
N G
just
B
we
O.
just call him Deo. And
Yeah, sure.
my,
Until
my
Dale.
apologies. Yeah, my apologies, but you Deo. I hope calling you Deo, and it's just okay.
Yeah. But yeah, a guy like Yannick Ngakoue's got to make a impact, because that move hasn't panned out yet. For the Colts, they've bought a pass rusher, and it they didn't get the productivity that they needed, and they have struggled to get a consistent pass rush. Obviously, switching to a 4-3 excites me. Um, I don't know what the Colts have been doing since I've been a Colts fan, but that defense has forever just a thorn in my side. I'm not a fan of the bend don't break cover two.
Yeah.
I'm just I want I've said in my coaching time that the only thing I understand about how to play defense is chaos. That's all I want is some fact, something that my defense is doing that absolutely is a nightmare offensively. I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling switching to a more aggressive 4-3 that
Yeah,
blitzes
it's gonna
uh
benefit. Yeah.
is going to get better pressure on these quarterbacks. It's going to stuff that run early, push the offense into second and long, which lets you pin your ears back, put them in a third and long situation, play good pass defense, make them give you the ball back with a good field position, right? Obviously, I'm scripting your ideal uh,
Yeah, your
defensive
ideal
game,
defensive
right?
possession. Yeah.
But that's what we need. We need less of 3, 4 first downs. They're threatening to score. We play good situational defense and force a field goal attempt. That's like okay. But I'd
Yeah,
rather
I
just
can live
have the
with it. Yeah.
ball, and I think that's why um the Colts obviously make a scheme change because they had guys leave. But a lot of the players are really excited about Gus Bradley, and as a coach,
Yeah.
when you hear the team you're rooting for's players are really happy about this hire, obviously I can't really see a framework where they would be unhappy with the hire and also talk about it. But so I understand that. But it's a good feeling knowing that there's been a scheme change, a regime change, and that the players are like, no, that's awesome. I'm good with that. Um, and then he brought in some new blood and like I said, you're hoping these young guys take that next little step forward. I was trying to think, what is this? What's the Quiddy Pay?
Would he
Um,
pay? Yeah.
needs
He's
the
been
step
having
he
like,
needs to take forward is last year. I feel like he's shocked himself. There were times where he beat the tackle. He absolutely got behind that guy, and he has the quarterback dead to rights, and he almost like he couldn't do it. That it was like a force field keeping him from just smacking that guy. And I think once you get to the NFL, once you get get to the window, right, which is get around the tackle, and he's right there. It's just a matter of you know what I mean? Like making
yeah, you
contact
had to
instead of
do. Yeah.
shuffling your feet and being like, "Oh my God, like I don't know what to do." I didn't expect to be here. Expect to be there. Um, so I'm kind of saying if the Colts are going to play their starters, I expect them to bust their ass, right? To do really well. And I think that has to be what the organization is telling these starters like, "Hey, we're expecting to put up 24 points in this half." We need
Yeah.
to show our fans that like the reason we put them out here is because we want to show you what we're going to do to people. We're going to put 40 on people and stop it and try to keep up, and the older I get, the more convinced I am that most of these NFL teams got 3, 4 scoring drives in them tops. There might be two teams in the NFL that could just keep going, you know what I mean? Chiefs, Bills come to mind.
Yeah.
um but you get somebody that's good at sort of like executing your game plan offensively. You get a guy like Shaquille Leonard back, uh, and playing to any shade of the sort of heights
What he's
he's played
capable
to.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna be just fine, because your pressures and sacks are going to increase. You've added better corners, so I expect a lower completion percentage allowed and possibly more turnovers, which was insane because the team was so opportunistic last year. It's just you're not going to
Yeah.
get as many turnovers as you did last year. I'm just saying, like, you're still just going to generate turnovers. Um, just because of the style of defense you're playing, where you're putting an additional player in the box, and we're expecting to blitz more often. It's just more pressure. Quarterbacks typically don't play well under pressure. That's one of the reasons
Yeah,
the Colts went out and got a guy like Matt Ryan, is he was like top in the league in completion percentage when the defense is sending more than four people. That was why you go out and get him, is because how do you beat, they know what our strengths are. We can run the ball on anyone, and our offensive line's actually got
yeah,
some considerable depth. So we need a quarterback who understands those things, knows that one, we have a running back that you want to put the ball in his hands. You might have two, right? You're just
yeah,
going to do it a little differently. So obviously, I'm real excited. I think obviously with before it even begins, I have higher expectations than last year.
yeah. You always
Um,
like, yeah,
but that feels like the expectations increase every year, and
yeah. But ever since Andrew left, this is like the first season where I'm thinking like, okay, this is a team like could realistically like make a deep run in the playoff. Of course, a lot
yeah.
of things can go bad, and anything can happen in a 17-game NFL season. But you got a quarterback, a guy that can lead the team. That is
Mhm.
what you need. You have one of the best running back in the NFL. You have some solid receivers. You have a very good offensive line. Tight end is a position where you could improve. Yeah, but what gives you have an improved defensive line. Linebacker still a question mark with Shaquille Leonard out. But then your secondary also is much improved. So you're like, okay, this is realistically a team that can make some noise in the playoffs.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And the running joke, or sort of a conversation that we'd had as a staff earlier this summer, is like last year's defense, while they did force a lot of turnovers, was not very good.
Yeah,
So all those improvements plus changing your style to be more aggressive up front, it's gonna yield similar. Just it's gonna be real hard to get. I think they had like 46 takeaways. That's just a ton. It's
yeah.
like almost three a
30.
game.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
remember if it was like 36 or I believe it's more 36,
is
but
it 36?
I remember like
It's
they,
like two
I
a
believe that
game.
they tied
It's
the,
just a ton, and it's not sustainable.
let me check.
Um, that's
They
why the
tied for the
Colts went
league.
out.
They tied for the league lead with the Bills, I suppose. I don't know if I remember correctly. Oh, with the Cowboys. It was 34 for the Cowboys, 33 for the Colts,
Okay, 33
and
takeaways.
then yeah, and then 30
Yeah,
for the Bills.
yeah. So that's basically two turnovers a game the Colts got last year. And again, I just don't think that's something that you can that's not realistic to continue,
Yeah,
especially with a regime change, a scheme change, and your best defensive player and defensive captain is on the mend, right?
yeah,
He's not full speed in practicing. So I still think that leaves a lot to be desired. Shaquille Leonard, his strength is that you almost never see him being engaged. He's almost always disengaged from a blocker and freely
yeah,
moving flowing towards the football and making the tackle where everybody else seems to just be blocked. And that's because he's got real long arms. He's just naturally hard to hold on to.
yeah,
And you need his sort of presence because of the fearlessness that he tends to play with, shuts plays down before they get going. And you miss that when you don't have that. And it's like you said, without Shaquille Leonard, that linebacker group is iffy, right?
yeah,
So trying to think, kind of hit up a whole bunch of topics. It's a Sunday night here. We're gonna put this out tomorrow morning.
yeah.
Um,
Like we're gonna do for the rest of the season.
yeah. So we'll record this on Sunday nights, give ourselves a little time to digest what happened. Um, and yeah, this has been Jared Malott with my good friend Mateo Cleese. Always good to see you, brother.
Yeah, always good to see you, bro. See you next
You
week.
still in relative winter state there, huh?
Yeah, the weather here is rather wild. We this has been one of the hottest winters I can remember. Winter here is like it can go down to like 10, 20 degrees Fahrenheit. No snow. We have no snow here where I live.
Okay.
Never. It's not like just once in my lifetime here in Buenos
Oh, wow.
Aires, and it was like a big event.
Hmm.
But yeah, going into spring now. Thank God.
Yeah. So I wanted to remind everyone, I was thinking about my why recently, about why we do things. And one of the reasons that I'm always really excited to sit down with you and have this discussion is that I think that it's really unique that we're both Colts fans and we're in opposite hemispheres. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, on the opposite side of town from the Colts
Yeah,
facility, and Mateo lives in Argentina. And
yeah,
I
from
just
the
think
other
it's the
part of the
coolest.
world. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just the coolest thing ever. And obviously, I think you're brilliant. Especially English as a second language. You come on here, and when I hear you speak, I'm like, you sound just as good as any of these analysts on TV. You've got a little bit of an accent, but other than that, it's
yeah,
just like it.
yeah,
I'm glad that you and I get to sit down. I think you're awesome. I'm happy that we're still doing this. Sort of our second season together. We did have a quiet off season, so I want to make sure
yeah. Thank
as we
God.
as we close our this episode that we say I'm not typically the kind of person to have what I would consider like a less meaningful conversation. And when your off season was productive and slow, that's a time
Yeah,
to just kind of let it be nice and quiet for a
yeah. Just
while.
don't.
Don't mess it up, right? That's kind of the way I think, but don't touch it. It's good. You're doing good. Just don't touch it.
Yeah, if
So
it ain't
yeah,
broke, don't fix it.
right. So, and that's the way I've done podcasting for a few years now is a weekly podcast during the regular season. Um, but in the off season, especially if there's not a lot of news, I'm just not. I love just to chop it up with you. We message each other all the time, but like in terms of actually sitting down recording a podcast episode, I want it to have some meat, something
Yeah,
to talk
something to
about.
talk
Like
about. Yeah,
I wasn't necessarily happy that Ogletree got injured, but I did message you. It was like at least there is now an
yeah.
injury to speak
It
of
was the
where,
first. Yeah, it was the first injury where we were like, okay, compared to last season where you had Quentin Nelson that was like a bit injured. You had Carson Wentz not taking part in camp, and you were like just every single week there was something to talk about. Now this off season has been quiet.
yeah, yeah. And lastly, I wanted to point out that people have messaged me and said, is there some chance that Sam Ellinger's the guy down the road? And no, 9 for
No,
11,
no, yeah,
couple
no,
touchdowns in a preseason game does not a starting quarterback in the NFL make. And I get it. People want to be, um, they want to have an original thought about it. And that if not Matt Ryan, then Nick Foles, but not Nick Foles, it's Sam Ellinger, right? He's a better athlete. He's the only
yeah.
he's
I
one of
mean,
three college quarterbacks all time to throw for I think what he had 10,000 yards of total offense and 1,500 yards rushing or something like that.
yeah, it was sound like that.
Um
Like he
that
and he made
again,
some
those
improvements, and he seems like a really good guy. He was
yeah.
talking. He seems to have like an impeccable work ethic. In my opinion, he's the perfect backup. He's the perfect guy to have in case something goes to shit.
Mhm.
And I hope he can develop to be a backup quarterback with us.
Yeah, because what he does have that we otherwise don't is that he's highly mobile. And you can imagine a scenario where if your starting caliber quarterbacks goes down, that's probably because of bad protection. You're probably going to want to put a guy back there that's got
Yeah, I
some
can move. Yeah,
survivability. Otherwise, your whole season. And again, this is me also saying they're going to hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor a lot, right? So as much as we sit here and talk about how important a quarterback is, Sam can hand it off. So
yeah,
just make sure it's a good perspective to have. Like, yes, he's a great backup. You hope you never have to play him. And
yeah,
and when you do in the preseason and he does well, it's what you pay him all that money for.
yeah,
But no, otherwise that the answer is no, he's not the future. If he was the future, they wouldn't have gone and got Matt Ryan. They would have just gotten a backup for him, pushed
yeah, and let
him to
him.
the
Yeah, and let him
and let him
roll.
take
Yeah,
over. But um, and again, it's not necessarily about how good of an athlete you are or how long you're around an organization. It's really about your command of an offense and the sort of leadership that that comes with what you bring to the table. And that's not to take anything away from Sam. It's just readily apparent. Like you talk about the Colts culture. That's a tongue twister. Colts culture. And then you bring in a guy like Matt Ryan that's going to hold your culture, right? Where a guy like Sam he's fit in, right? Not standing out. Um,
Yeah.
and again, that's what you want out of a backup. But he's backup. He's accepted that. And again, that's no disrespect. That's just a little dose of reality.
Yeah,
Uh,
no disrespect,
so
man.
yeah, again,
Love the
this has
guy.
been episode 31 of the Coltist. Again, my name is Jared Malott. I'm here with my good friend Mateo Calise, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.